Okay, so for this project, you're gonna have to choose if you want to use all hot colors or cool colors. As you can see on this one, I've drawn out a silhouette, and a silhouette is like a black sort of image that you can tell what it is, but it maybe doesn't have as much detail over the surface of it. I've chosen to make mine kind of a spooky scene. You don't have to do it as spooky as this one is, but if you want to, whenever we go to draw this, I'll show you how to do the tree and the haunted house and some of the other details on here. This is what it looks like if you do the hot colors. Here's what the cool colors would look like. So this would be more of like a spooky nighttime scene. This would be like I don't know, an evening time, okay, essentially. But you have to pick. You can't use both cool and hot for this because we're using a special type of paper. It's called color diffusing paper. I think this is a really neat paper. It's kind of like a big coffee filter, but it allows the color to do some really neat things. One thing I want to caution you on is whenever you get yours, I'm going to give you a big piece of paper to use as a cover sheet. Once you start putting the paint on your color diffusing circle, don't lift it up at all while it's still wet. Leave it flat on there, because otherwise what happens is every time you lift it up, the paper, I don't know why this happens, but all the paper that's on the circle goes down into the bottom of the cover sheet, and actually it's going to do that a little bit, and you're going to get this really cool paper at the end once it dries. But if you keep pulling it and picking it up while it's still wet, it won't do this. It'll just be all gray on the background. It won't be as like a cool planet looking paper like this one is. So leave it flat on there. Once you start adding the color, don't pick it up at all till it dries. All right. The other thing you have to make sure of is that you take your color diffusing circle, and somewhere on there, not on the cover sheet, but on the color diffusing circle, I want you to put your name right at the edge. So I'm going to put Mrs. Mitchell, and look what I wrote it in. I wrote it in Sharpie because we're going to add a lot of paint and water to this. And I want to make sure I can find yours and get it back to you later. If you write it in pencil, it might not show up. Okay, so to get started, this is pretty easy. I'm going to use all hot or cool colors. What should I use here today? Hot or cool? Hot or cool? Hot or cool? Hot or cool? I think I'm going to do hot. I think that looks really neat. So I'm going to take some water first of all. I showed you the wet on wet technique recently already once. This is the same kind of thing, except it's a totally different type of paper. So it's going to do it, that technique is going to work even better on this paper. You have to get it wet first. I wouldn't wet down the whole circle because it'll be dried by the time you get it all the way wetted down. Just wet down a little part of it or a spot on it. Open up some yellow paint. I'm going to stir the yellow. I don't know if you know this, but the yellow has glitter in it. It just comes like that. I don't know why. Okay, well, I told you it was going to do that effect even better on here. It will once I get a little bit more water and color built up. At first, sometimes it doesn't really do much at first, but once I start adding like some orange to this, it's going to work really well. Now, I told you this whenever we did the Mona Lisa project, just as a reminder, use yellow first. Anywhere that you're going to put yellow on here, go ahead and use it. So that way the yellow does not get contaminated by the other slightly darker colors. Even though red and orange are hot colors, there's the bell, school is about to start. Okay, if you are not careful, the yellow can still get contaminated. If you get a little bit of paint that drips onto your cover sheet, don't worry about it, just leave it, it's fine. Now, if you don't wet the paper down, it's gonna be fine too. If you just wanna put it straight on the paper, that works just as well. I like to have that little bit of water so that as I add additional colors to this, they will kind of blend and go together a little bit better. If it's a little bit more wetted down, it works better. Sorry, I'm not filming this very well. I'm trying to film and paint and talk, and sometimes that doesn't work out so well. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in with orange, and I'm gonna just start adding this, and there it goes. The wet on wet technique is working a little bit better the more water I built up on there. Now, there does become a point when this color diffusing circle will get too full of paper. It'll become too saturated to do much. So just so you guys know, once it gets all the way wet, right here in this spot, how it's all the way wet, you can't get it any wetter than that. So even though you might still keep trying to add water to that, all that's going to do is make the paint spread out and spread out and spread out till it can't spread out anymore, and it's going to actually turn it a lot lighter. So once you start adding the color on here, you'll know once it gets all totally saturated, there will become a time whenever you can't add any more. Okay, so eventually I want this to look like a sky. So I'm not going to keep going. I'm going to keep on adding paint and just making this very colorful and trying to make it very vibrant with my hot colors. All right, now this will have to dry in the drying rack, and these are kind of hard to put in the drying rack because this is such a big, huge, gigantic piece of paper. So I'll be kind of helping with that step. Once you guys go to put them in the drying rack, I'll kind of help with that. Once they dry, then we'll be able to draw the silhouette and stuff on there. So if you get done today and you're done with the Mona Lisa project, you can go over and get some practicing paper and try to draw your little silhouette of your cat and your haunted house as practice, because once you get your color diffusing circle, you probably won't be able to start out in pencil because it won't really show up on here. You'll have to draw everything in marker. So if I were you today, once you finish painting, you should get your white paper and just practice. And actually, just to tell you a little secret, if you do a good job on the practicing papers, you might even be able to slide those underneath this color diffusing paper once it dries and trace some of your original drawings. So that's why, one of the reasons why I want you to practice. Make sure you write your name on those practice pieces so that you can use that if that works out as an option for you. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up any little spots that don't have very much water or paint. I'm going to just keep adding. If I have to go back to yellow, I'm going to make sure to rinse out my brush really good, grab just a tad more yellow, add that in, spread it around with the orange. And this is looking pretty cool. And that's pretty much all you do. All right, have fun. Thanks.